Hey everybody, my name is Jordan Newman. I'm an author, speaker.
Hi Rachel, sorry.
Hey Rachel.
Hey,
Nice to meet you.
We're just starting.
We're live.
We're live.
Oh,
Come on in.
okay.
Come on in.
Okay,
Have a
thank
seat.
you.
I am an author, speaker, investor, and realtor from the Think Real Estate team. I'm really excited today because we've got my partner, Paul Haley, is going to talk to you about how to buy, renovate a home from any size, really, from the smallest to larger projects. We're going to learn a lot today from Paul. Paul not only helps clients buy and renovate real estate, he actually walks the talk. Paul's done a number of projects for himself and his family as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my partner, Mr. Paul Haley.
And the crowd goes wild. Woo! So you will see some people trickle in to the live audience tonight, just so you know. Welcome everyone, welcome online, welcome to the live audience.
Thank you.
So I guess, the first question people have in their mind is, why the heck would you buy and renovate a house, right? And really the shorter answer is, you can save money, and Jordan's going to talk a little bit about it, and I'm going to talk about it. But we've gotten people great deals for properties that weren't necessarily show ready, right? And you can build exactly what you want. So that's the real benefit is, yeah, you can buy a fully rented house, but you don't really know what's behind the walls, under the floors, in the mechanicals. So that's important to think about. And you also create equity. So we'll walk through some numbers to show you that today. But there are challenges, right? Like there's going to be some sleepless nights. You're going to have to finance a reno. There's lots of things that we've done and we've helped our clients. It is a challenging process. Jordan and I like to kind of tell it how it is, right? And that's part of it is there's some challenges. So we're going to kind of walk through all these questions tonight. So I guess the question for the online crowd is, has anyone renovated? And here, I guess, no renovations in the crowd.
My parents, yes, but not me personally.
Okay, but considering potentially a renovation.
Yes.
Yeah. So some people, their family has renovated, but they haven't. Anybody online? You jamming?
I'll tell you.
Okay. Let me know. I think the biggest thing and the thing we want to kind of go through are some of the numbers. So what I did is I broke this into, two kind of reno potential projects, things that we've actually done. So this is someone that bought, a two-story family home, a nice little house. We got a great price because it was set up for tenants, and the tenants were actually paying below market rents. So we got it for a great deal. And let me just kind of crunch the numbers, and I'm comparing that family home to like the exact same house but fully renovated, right? So we bought that house for a little over 1.2. The fully renovated version is a little over 1.6, right? So the down payment is less on the one that we got. The close, so that's about $240,000. The closing cost about $35,000, and then the rental budget was about $125,000. I actually gave them my own kitchen, so I kept that a little bit lower. It may seem like a crazy thing for a realtor to do, but I was actually renovating my house, and it was kind of like a nice way to not throw out a whole kitchen, right? So the point here is the total cash that these guys put out would have been about $400,000 versus if you had bought it that finished property, it's a little less than $400,000, right? They're kind of a close number, and part of that number, the renovation budget, doesn't have to be cash. That could have been. We'll talk about that later. How you can finance a project like this. So it doesn't have to be all cash. We just sort of said cash, but the total savings was a little over $250,000, like $250,000, And really, when you think about that, how fast can you save $250,000, right?
After tax.
After tax, yeah. So if you're saving, 25 grand after tax a year, which is a lot, that's 10 years.
Yeah, it's $2,000 a month for 10 years.
Yeah.
After tax.
After tax. So think about that. That's the numbers, right? That's why people do renos. And then, so this is actually my house, 228 Liscar. And so we took a perfectly good house and tore it apart. And we're adding a third story. So when I did these numbers, that's not what we paid. We got it a long time ago. And what is a bit cheaper? Come on in.
Yeah.
Sorry, we already got started.
Oh gosh, come on in.
Yeah. So we have an online audience and a live audience at the same time, just so you know. So I'm just kind of going through some of the numbers. I'll do this one and then maybe pop back to this one for you guys if you have questions. Any questions online so far? No? So this is actually my house that I'm renovating right now. So what I'm doing is comparing, two different types of projects. So this is a big reno. This would be like a smaller kind of reno. So my house, I already owned it, but if I had tried to buy the comparable house and renovate it, it would have been about $2.2 million. So then you need a down payment of a little over $440. Your closing costs $85,000, and then it is quite a significant rental budget, right? Which I did actually finance, so I don't need 1.3 million in cash. Yeah, shoot.
Is it down payment for 25%?
20%. 20%. Yeah.
Okay.
It could be 25 sometimes. It won't change.
But on a 2.2 million, the down payment on it would, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, it won't change the story. It'll change the numbers a little bit, right? Yeah. It depends on your. It's a great question. It depends on your lender, right? Some are going to want 20. Some depends on what loan to value they give you, right? But so since you're a numbers guy, the thing to really notice is your land transfer tax is actually $110,000 more, right? So, and that's money you just give to the government.
I'm not sure they explained that the 166 is, it's a finished one.
Yeah, oh yeah, so sorry, this is fully finished, basically the same house.
Just down the street.
Just down the street, like, you can look up the addresses on Google if you want. They're really close. And this one was finished to a level that we're gonna be finishing to. I mean, I think ours is gonna be nicer, but.
Because the transfer tax was more than double than the amount. It's like 30,000 more. It's like 60% more almost.
Yeah, because the first piece of your land transfer. So the question is, how does the land transfer tax work, really? And like when you do the calculators, it after you hit a certain point, then it's 4%, right? So the more expensive your property gets, it actually accelerates a bit faster, right? That's why it's such a huge difference. Does that make sense? And then, basically, because I looked at this when I was doing my rent, I was like, do I actually sell my house and buy another house, or do I go through with a very expensive reno? And the short answer was, I'm going to save over $1 million by doing a renovation, right? So, yes, the answer is yes. And then, so just for the people that just joined, this was like a smaller project, right? So we got a
They're
great.
both about a 1,500 square foot house, I'd say, Paul?
Yeah, not a big house, but this one's fully renovated, and this one we bought and renovated for clients. So the point here is, you need about the same amount of money to do it. You can finance the rental piece, so you really need a bit less kind of upfront, but you're saving over $250,000 just doing a rental, right?
Okay.
So that's why it's
And so,
interesting.
do you think that the 228 listed, that's going to be 4 million after the renos?
Ish, yeah, around there, yeah. That's my house, so.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a bit different. Truthfully, this property is a bit wider,
Okay.
but ours has a secondary suite and a studio in the laneway. And ours will be nicer on the inside.
So a quick question.
Yeah.
When you say savings, like these numbers, what are you saving towards? Like saving?
No, this again.
So if you add up like this plus this plus this plus this, and this, so by the difference between buying this or buying and renovating you're saving 1.4 million.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is this cost including like carrying costs and renovation time?
No, that's, no. But I have a spreadsheet where I do that. Yeah. Great question. Great question. This is just to kind of frame, like, here's how we think about it, right? And we can come back to that if you want.
Yeah.
So, the question a lot of people have is, what can I build, right? Like, if I go and find a crappy house, what can I do with it? You know? Oh, yeah, come on in. Yeah, traffic's kind of nuts here.
Yeah.
We just went through some numbers, so we'll come back to that maybe at the end for you guys, because it'll really help. So what a lot of people ask us is, what can I build when I buy a property? What can I do? And the more important points also are not only what can you build, but what adds the most value, right? So we'll talk about that. And also, there are some building restrictions, right? So you can add additional space, and that's one of the things that does add a lot of value. Any above ground floor space will add a lot of value to your home, right? So we added a third floor, knowing that would add hundreds of thousands of dollars to the value of our house, more than we put in. Secondary suites, so that's, could be a garden suite, could be a layaway suite, could be a basement unit, there's lots of different ways to do it. I don't want to get too in depth into, because there's duplexes, triplexes, secondary suites, they're all different building code things. But we don't need to sort of dive into that for the purposes of this conversation, but just so you know, like, there's lots of ways to do that. Bedrooms and bathrooms, you can, typically can add lots of bedrooms and bathrooms. They do add value, bathrooms in particular, like if you add a main floor bathroom, those are things that really can increase the purchase price, the sale price. And then kitchens and finishes. So, typically upgrading your kitchen will add a lot of value. And truthfully, the best ROI in the business is painting, right? Just, you'll see when we go to sell houses, we'll come in often and we'll paint the whole house, because it's actually has the best ROI, right? You got all these crazy colors, just make it nice and white. Yeah.
Painting also flooring too, right? Flooring's the cost.
Yeah, it sort of depends. If you're just trying to sell it, it's a different question than if you do the flooring. And there's lots of different flooring and lots of different price points. And do you do the subfloor? So, but yeah, it's a great point. Flooring often will add some value, but again, it's one of those things that personal taste versus maximizing ROI. And the point here is, like, when we're helping you think about what kind of reno you do, like, first and foremost, you have to build the thing that you want and the thing that you love. But we're going to guide you and try and help you make sure you're doing the best ROI, right? You're putting the money in the best places, because we know, down the road, things can change and you might have to sell, right? So you don't want to be in a situation where you over-renovate for a neighborhood, and Jordan's going to talk a little bit about that in a second. The other thing you need to know is there are restrictions. There's height restrictions, there's lot depth restrictions, there's house depth restrictions, there's a lot of building code restrictions. So that's another thing that we help. Not a lot of realtors know that stuff, so we help people kind of figure that out.
We're in the, I think we're like over the weekend, we're at the Hamilton show where we have to pay tickets to it, and apparently in Hamilton, Niagara region, like the basements can only be like 6.5 high or something in terms of like the length there.
Jordan's our resident. That's a nice transition.
Well, yeah, no, you can go higher. The code is higher. Ontario Building Code. Ontario Building Code is higher. So if you're building to code, it is 8 feet.
No, for a basement apartment, that's 7 change.
7, 6.
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
so that's the code.
I
So
called
if
you a
you're-
liar for 6 inches, Joe.
Right. There's a joke there. So I just, you guys just walked in. I just want to get a feel for. Are you looking to do maybe renovation? Are you looking to do? I'm kind of trying to find out where you are, because there's different issues that we can hit along the way. What you guys just missed was kind of, what we were getting at is was the difference between, and I've actually gone through this myself, and for certain clients, it makes more sense to buy a fully renovated house. It's already done, you finance it, the cost of the renovations are built into the mortgage, or do we buy, say, a rougher house, maybe ones we say with good bones or what have you, and re-renovate? Where are you guys? Is anybody, or just, they have your own home and you're thinking about it, or?
No, so just building off of what you just said, I just got licensed about 6 months ago.
Okay,
So I just wanted to be more educated on what I could tell my clients when
Right.
they're looking for a home.
okay, good.
And like, yeah, the ROI and the equity they can build through
Sure,
renovations.
sure.
So that's why.
Okay, well, we can walk you back through some of the numbers later. You just missed some of the numbers, but we can go back to that later. But it is really, it's interesting.
My question would be, even before you selected a property, right now, like in this market and inflation's so high, like how would you get away with buying a house that's a deal? Like, where is there certain locations? Should you go on the outskirts and find a cheaper home there? Like, how do you get over
That's
Right.
a great segue to
Yeah,
the next slide.
yes, it's a good segue to the next one, but you know, that's one where we could probably sit around and talk about for a long, long time. And I think anybody that really says they know exactly where to buy when there is a transition time to guarantee that the market is going to go up. We're actually going to get to that, and it has to do, you brought up a really good point that I'm going to get to a bit of that, I'm going to get half of that answer, and Paul's going to get to the other half of that answer when we talk about what's going on in the market currently and sort of the ripple effect of what's happening in the market. That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you with that, her, like, you know, all of her questions, how do you know when you look at that, okay, it's good value, that you're buying this, and after renovation, exactly, you know.
Terrific. Okay, I'm going to get to that in one or two slides.
This
So just,
Yeah.
is it this one?
Yeah. Oh, no, other way.
Backwards,
Other way.
okay.
Sure.
Hey,
Okay,
Oh, 2 slides.
yeah, so, I'm going to get to that in one more slide, or maybe I'll go to, let me just get to this one. We put in this slide, and this is typically what we deal with a lot. Paul and I, we do real estate in this area. And the reason I like this slide is that it's actually a house that we did with a client. And it's a typical home that we find in Little Portugal. They're all over the city. This particular home was actually a rooming house, so we got it for a great deal. But it's called, you know, it's a typical, it's got good bones, but it is very cosmetically distressed. And this particular property was in a great area. It's in Dufferin Grove, Lindsay Street. I don't know if you know it, but it's basically very close to Dufferin Mall. Almost halfway between College and Bloor, a little closer to College, but either way, walking distance, so you've got access to great transportation and what have you. But anyways, the top pictures here are kind of what it was and then what we turned it into. So the before was kind of, you know, like my house, that questionable angel stone. There was this is the living room area on the main level. So this is the wall here. This is the kitchen. It's hard to see, but it's, you know, it wasn't terrible, but it was definitely drab. And this was the basement, and it's interesting you brought up the basement issue because they'd actually dug out the basement here, and this is what jumped off the page when I saw this property. They'd actually dug out the basement, but they put in some crazy wall here in the middle of it. So you're in a nice basement apartment that had light, and it was tall. It was 7'6".
Yeah.
And it had a crazy wall in the middle of it. So it was just like, it was very boxed, cut up into pieces and what have you. But anyway, this is what the property looked like afterwards. We just did a paint job on the outside and went and did the gray. We blew out this wall here. So now this is the living area, the kitchen living area, okay? So now it's nice open concept. When I say we, I mean the contractors that we work with, that we provided to our clients. This is the kitchen. It had a quick cosmetic. There was, these cabinets were painted. Was they painted?
No, the bottom ones maybe they resurfaced.
I think they resurfaced some, yeah.
They kept most of the
And then we put the new tops on them.
Yeah.
Obviously, we brought out the brick. The main thing here was sort of the exposed brick and the blowing out the wall. I think is that really opened it up. It really gave it a lot of light. And then downstairs we did the same thing. We took out this crazy wall and it just opened it all up. So this we got this for 1.13. It was about a $70,000 reno. So this is what we call a cosmetic reno. The cosmetic renos I've done in the past are usually, I would say, between say $30,000 and $100,000.
Yeah, depends.
$100,000-ish dollars.
Yeah.
In other words, you're not building anything else major. You might be taking out a wall, but you're not building up. You're not building an extension, that type of thing. That's what we call a cosmetic. Paint, we obviously painted the whole property.
Yeah, did some floors.
The after reno value on this property, okay, this is a bit, so we did this project a little over a year ago. Immediately afterwards, after the 6 weeks of this work, it would already gone up to 1.3. In other words, they immediately made $100,000. This property today was probably up to about 1.45, and now it might be
1.6, probably, yeah.
yeah, now it would be,
No,
yeah.
1.6, actually.
yeah,
Yeah,
that high, yeah, could be.
yeah.
So it's significantly higher now, but this is just how quickly they made it immediately on that reno. So this is what we call a typical cosmetic reno. This is actually what I did in my house, very similar type of situation. I didn't do anything major. I did a lot of paint. I changed some things out, but in my case, it was only about $30,000, but it raised the value of my property about $150,000 after it was done.
With the cosmetic renovation, how much do you need to go right to?
We weren't doing anything here other than, I mean, the only thing we really did here was take out a wall, but no, we didn't do permits in that case.
It's technically need a permit if you take out a wall.
Yeah.
How do they figure out if the wall was like a stability thing?
Yeah, that would have been the contractor going in. I mean, quite frankly, we know.
Yeah.
In Toronto, honestly, there's about 5 different types of layouts for about 90% of the houses.
Really?
Like literally,
Actually, and they do look all so similar,
Yeah.
90% of the houses are dining room in the front, living room, dining room, kitchen, upstairs, bathroom at the top or at the side, 3 bedrooms, 2 of them are small, 1 is the main. You know, that is basically every Victorian in the city, which is,
Yeah.
okay? And so we're used to using that dynamic
Okay.
over and over and over and over again.
Typically, the floor joists run like this way, you know, from here to here, right?
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah,
holds
so
the
it should
floor
be
up.
fine.
So if the wall's this way, then it could be supporting,
Okay.
but this was running the same way, so it wasn't.
Okay.
One thing I would point out to people, and we do find this question comes up, and it always happens with clients when we're bringing them through property, is they go, oh my God, is that a retaining wall, or what have you, and it completely freaks them out.
Yeah, like it looks so sturdy, that wall.
Right. And the thing is, quite frankly, even if you're dealing with a wall like that, we do it all the time.
Yeah, you can just.
Houses all over the city are being opened up.
Yeah,
We're
it's
really,
like-
really good at putting up beams now and being able
Yeah.
to deal with that issue. And it's an issue of thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars. So when you compare that and the value that you're getting at it, you compare that with what you could be spending even on laying down wood on a deck now instead of
Yeah.
$1,000, okay?
Yeah.
So some of the things that you think are big and are expensive are actually not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes the other way as well.
Yeah.
Okay? But our point here is that when we're working with our clients, we're trying to find property that can easily be added value to.
And
Okay?
so was this a client of yours, this property?
It was, yeah.
So
And
do
it's-
you work with investors then?
Yes,
So
we
you
work
help
with a lot of
figure-
investors. We do. So in this particular case, another thing that we liked about this property was it's really flexible. So what ended up happening here is the main house is being rented out. The basement is being rented out. So it's a pure cash flow play for them. But eventually, and quite frankly, our clients right now are traveling all over the world. And when they come back, they quite very well possibly, I think it's like their big tour before they potentially get married. I don't know if he's asked her yet.
No, yeah.
Oh, they did get married?
Yeah, they got
Okay, I
married.
didn't know. Okay, I didn't tell. Anyways,
They
okay.
got
I think-
married after, before they bought the house, after they bought the house,
Right.
right after they closed.
But I think they're looking at potentially they will now live in it as their house. So it's gets nice flexibility.
Is this like a legal duplexer, or is this
No.
Nice.
No,
No.
no.
So
Now,
yeah,
the
we
thing
talked
is
about.
though, it could be because there is 2 entrances and it does have the height.
Yeah, and if they have
So-
2 tenants, you said they have tenants downstairs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's most of them would be much harder because they haven't been dug out. The people before this, I think, were trying to make it. I don't know why they didn't finish it. I don't know what the story on it was, but it had already been dug out. It had already been underpinned. So we're very fortunate that way.
So
But-
essentially, sorry, you would
That's all right.
need a permit if you're changing anything structurally.
Yeah.
And HVAC and bathrooms and, it's, yeah.
So anything that's not painting.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, yeah. We have to be careful what we say because quite frankly, a lot of people wouldn't do that for change a bathroom. I think technically by the letter of the law, you know,
if you're changing plumbing, yeah,
yeah.
but a lot of people don't, so.
A lot of people.
And a lot of, like, well, people don't even make things up to fire code, and we always recommend that you do, but.
Need to cover the cameras here for a minute.
No,
So-
I said we recommend you
Yeah.
make things to fire code.
Yeah.
People may choose or choose not to do that.
That's real estate.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because I was in a seminar last week, and because personally for us, like I'm looking to invest on like whatever, but you know, a couple of things that I run is because I'm getting different timelines in terms of renovation time.
Sure.
Because that renovation time is money. You know,
For sure.
The cost of lending with
For sure.
interest rate going up.
Yeah.
And on that being said, you know, realistically to renovate a house like that, it usually they were telling me that it usually takes about 3 or 4 months. You can add that to a realistic time, but
Yeah.
the 6 weeks realistically is pretty quick for that. Is that
Well, I would agree, listen, I would agree with you. We timed it very tight and we have a very good contractor who we know and we've recommended and it went boom, boom, boom. Does that happen every time? No. You know, if I were to say to a client, you know, if you were to block time,
Yeah.
you might block, say, 3 months for this project.
Yeah.
They were able to get in and out in 6 weeks. Today, is that gonna happen you might get it done in 6 weeks, you might be, you know, but if you're logically going to maybe block some time, you'd say, hey, you know,
And we'll talk about the timeline,
Yeah.
like in a little
we
bit.
are gonna get to that in a second,
Yeah.
but you know, it's an excellent question to ask. And obviously, it depends on the contractor that you're working with, and hopefully, you know.
And
we
if they're
help you.
available and there's.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the crux of the matter. A lot of people who do, I know a guy that does this for a living, and he will buy a property and wait even for a year till he gets his people in to do his job the way he wants it, you know, and because he only brings in his people. So people have different philosophies about that. You know, we've worked with a number of different contractors. Paul's got one that he's working with closely right now that's doing it in his own house. It's done other properties with us. So, you know, we work with people, but it also depends on where it's going to be, right? But I think I'll get to some of these as well. These are some of the key things that we're looking for, and I'm putting it in here because this particular property hit almost every one of them. So we really hit it out of the ballpark.
And this is kind of a question they
Yeah, yeah. So in this particular, what are we looking for in general on an investment property? We want it close to transit. That one was, you know, halfway between College and Bloor. What more do you want, right? ARV is after rental value. That has a lot to do with not only the house, but the neighborhood. What will the neighborhood support? So this particular one was in Dufferin Grove. Dufferin Grove happens to be one of the highest and fastest growing ARV values in the city right now. If you look at, I just did the numbers actually for the average sale price in Dufferin Grove last month, and I think it was 2.2 million for just overall of a general house in Dufferin Grove. So, you know, it can certainly support, you know, 1.5, 1.6, and a lot more in that neighborhood. So you want to be in a neighborhood that will support, you don't want to put $1 million into a house into a neighborhood that the top value house is only $1.5 million. Do you know what I mean?
But that terms, are you talking about in terms of the types of house too, like semi-detached, detached, or was it any?
That was any, it wasn't detached, it was,
Townhouse?
no, it was anything but condos.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
Diamond in the rough, well, this particular one was certainly a diamond in the rough. As I said, what appealed to me was the good bones, but I could have taken 5 different other clients through that house, and they probably would have hated it because it was a rooming house. We were fortunate, quite frankly, that we had a client that could see past the fact that it was dirty-ish because it was a rooming house and there was shoes everywhere and all that.
Those are the actual MLS pictures, apparently.
Yeah, oh, was it? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, you have to see past it.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we had a client that, I look at it and I go, I loved it immediately. Because I've been in, literally thousands of these places, and I can see, okay, the floors aren't warped, and, I could see that it was a solidly built home in basically good shape that was very cosmetically ugly. And that's how you find a diamond in the rough. You have to get past that. For any other, the reason it was sat on the market for a little bit is the typical family that wanted to buy a home in the neighborhood, they just had a young child or something like that. They don't want to, they can't see past that. They want a house that's already done, right? And they're going to pay that 1.5. They're going to pay that 1.6. Our clients were able to look past it, and they've done very, very well because of that. It had laneway and garden potential. Is everybody familiar with laneway and garden suites or what have you? Okay. So now you are familiar with it? Okay, so a laneway suite and a garden suite is now you are able to build in, I don't know, almost 70%. What is it now in Old Toronto? What is the
How many
percentage
can you build?
No, what is the percentage now of houses that you can actually build potentially a garden suite or a laneway?
Well, most are zoned, but the
Yeah.
problem is you won't get it because of fire code. So
Yeah.
I'd say like probably 10% of the houses.
Yeah, it started out with laneway suites, and laneways, it's a property that backs onto a public laneway. Now, if you've ever been to Vancouver, you're able to build on a property that backs onto a public laneway. You're not able to subdivide that, but you can build on that, and it's an absolute dynamite opportunity to add value to your property. The typical, let's say if you're building at $250 a square foot, once built, the property is probably worth about anywhere from $750 to $1,000 a square foot. So on a $1,000 piece of property, you can see that you just made yourself.
I actually lived in Vancouver for a little bit of my life, and
Okay.
they actually break down and they rent the whole entire unit as like a rental property, and they separate from exactly.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Well,
It's
that's
a separate
exactly what it
dwelling
is.
unit,
That's
yeah.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And then just recently, what we've done is open it up to garden suites. So garden suite is not what means that you're not on a laneway. Okay, so you're not on a public laneway. You are building in the back of your property. We can get into what the dimensions of that and what have you are. But what we want to do is we want to look for a property that isn't currently built on, but we can add value to that. So for this particular client, they've already got a cash flow positive property. They could now take out some equity. Okay, so they've got it for, they're into it for 1.2. They've got an extra $400,000 worth of equity. They could take out, say, $300,000 of equity out of that now and build a laneway suite and make another $500,000-600,000. So
And rent that for like
and
$4,000
rent that
a month.
for $4,000 a month.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic, overall play. So that's another thing that we look for.
With the laneway building and all that stuff, structure and including like zoning and stuff, how long do you take your time to build something like that, including getting the permits or building permits and blueprints?
6 months to a year, depending.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
As a matter of fact, Paul is doing one for a client right now.
I'm doing one for me right now.
Yeah.
There is a prefab that they say they can do in 12 weeks. So
Yeah, we're looking at different, it really depends on the nature of what you're using it for. I've got a number of friends, for example, who are looking at it as cash flow for now.
Yeah.
I'm getting into that demographic where some of my investors and friends are looking at retirement over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, build this now, get income out of it, and then one day I will rent out the main house, and I will live in 1,000 square foot, 1,200 square foot, or what have you, laneway house. It gives all kinds of flexibility. I'm actually looking at doing a laneway to put my father into for myself. So it's a multi-generational types of issue. So and then eventually, whatever, I could rent it out too, or what have you. So, basement access and height. The first thing that we do is I go down, and the typical basement in Toronto is right on top of my head. It's exactly 6 feet. I'm about 6'1", so it's just scraping the top of my head. And if you can get anything above that, or even 6 feet's not the worst, but if you can get anything above that, it's a bonus. Okay? So in this particular property, we had actually 7 feet 6, which was fantastic. That would have cost, how much does it cost at
underpinnings about 50 to 70 grand. Depending
Yeah,
on
on it, let's say that was 700 square feet. Well, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be like, yeah, a lot of it depends on access, like if they can get stuff in there.
Right,
Let's
right.
say 50 grand, we just did a
Minimum
house
50,000,
that
just to
was
underpin.
70 grand,
Right.
just so you know.
So if it's already been done for you, you just saved yourself $50,000 to $70,000 plus the headache of doing it. And the next one is lot size. So there's huge premium more and more on the size of a lot now. So the bigger the lot size, the bigger potentially you could build in the future. And I'll have Paul go into that. And finally, flexibility. This last house, the beauty of it is it can be a single family home that our clients can live in one day. It's cash flowing positive. They can keep the person in the basement and then eventually move in and then eventually take over the basement too. I have somebody in my basement. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. In about 2 years, when they drive me even more crazy, I'm going to take over the basement and they're going to be, their playroom and all that stuff's going to go downstairs. So it's a flexibility in the property that we like as well. But there's other issues in terms of flexibility, but that's the one I like.
When you're doing contracting work, do you see the blueprints and all that other stuff? Like, do the contractors do that, or I personally have to do all the zoning myself? Like, apply for the permits and stuff. Like, who usually does that job? Like,
You usually hire like different professionals. So it depends on what you're building, right? So
let's say I'm building, let's say tomorrow, like, let's say for example, some foreclosure homes, right? And
Yeah.
I see it and I actually want to do all the zoning for that. Do I hire
yeah, so there's people that will do like the permits and the stuff for you. I have a guy that's cheap. There are lots of options, like architects can do them. Jordan's gonna talk about this. Designers can do it. Like, yeah, you can personally do it. I don't advise. I'll talk a little bit about that in the timeline, like what's that process look like. But yeah, you definitely. And if you work with us, we'll connect you with those people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And can I just jump in on lot size?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if we covered it enough, but so lot size is important. It's lot size and how much square footage you can build in the house. It's called GFA. I don't know if you guys heard that. Am I not on the camera? Okay. So the city of Toronto is like a dog's breakfast in terms of GFA, but some neighborhoods are 100%, and some neighborhoods are 60, some are 80. So you have to know that when you're buying the property, depending on what you want to do with it. So what that means is, like, say you have 1,000 square foot lot and it's 100% coverage, you can build 1,000 square foot house on that lot. It's subject to height and depth restrictions as well, but that's what 100% means. Most of Toronto is 60, so it means you can build a 600 square foot house without going to the community adjustments. And I'll talk about that in a bit. And the other important part of that is laneways don't count on that GFA. So like a laneway is a separate dwelling, but it doesn't count against that 100%. So that's also why it's cool.
Yeah, laneways we do another seminar on laneways. They're really, really cool. They're a great opportunity.
Wait, so you're saying if you were to use the full, let's say it was on 60%, and you use the full 600, you can also additional build on top of that, and it doesn't count as.
So yeah, so let's say you had 1,000 square foot thing, and 60%. Your house could be 600 square feet, and if you're a laneway, you could also build a laneway at the back. There's restrictions of the sizes of laneway, but you can build that, and it doesn't count against the.
Oh, just
Yeah.
accepted.
You can build a bit more, like if you do an addition, they let you add 9%, and typically you can go to the community adjustment and get a little bit more. But it's just like, so what we do, like what Jordan's going to say is, when we work with people and they want to do certain things, we make sure the lot you're buying can actually accommodate what you want to do with it. Right. Sorry for jumping in.
Yeah. Okay, how do you finance a reno? How most people start off, or a lot of people start off, how I've done mine in the past, is my HELOC, as everybody knows, the home equity loan is, line of credit. So that's the easiest one, if you've already got home equity line of credit. If you don't have one, you could be using an unsecured line of credit. Obviously, anything that's secured, you're paying a lower rate. In the past, I've used my secured, my unsecured, my credit card, whatever you needed to do in order to do it. But obviously, you kind of got to go 1, 2, 3, because this is about 4%, this is about 6%, and this could be anywhere from 12 to 29, right? I've got one at 12. Obviously cash, if you have it. Friends and family, this one can be a bit controversial with people. You know, friends and family, when we're talking about friends and family, it's not necessarily what you might think. I've actually borrowed from within my family, and what it was a second mortgage. This is actually a lot more common than some people think, because you can borrow within the family and actually make it legal. So in my case, it was a second mortgage. My parents actually are retired now, and their income comes from mortgages and second mortgages. There's a lot of people right now who are sitting on piles of money and don't want to just get 1.5% at a bank or a trust company or what have you. So if they can do a second mortgage and make 6%, 8%, 10%, what have you, they're very willing to do that. And sometimes that's right within your family. I've actually worked with accountants in the past who knows people's books, and they know people who are lending out, for example, who want to do second mortgage or some type of line for it. So it's a little bit more than, hey, Dad, can I borrow $20,000 off? It's not really what I'm getting at there. Alternative lenders, so B lenders and hard money lenders as well. Does everybody know what that is? It's basically just using other people's money and paying a little bit higher. It's unsecured. You're paying a higher percentage for that. Construction financing, I've never done that. Paul has done that, so maybe you can speak to it.
Yeah, so, I mean, construction financing's expensive, and they don't give you all the money right away, right? They only release it in tranches. You know, like I'm paying close to 10% for the money, and the fees are 3 to 5% depending.
Is it interest only? Is it interest only?
Yeah, it's interest only.
These tend to be interest only.
Yeah, they tend, and they also will lend based on what your plan is, right? I mean, that's really why you need to do it sometimes, because they'll look at, you say, okay, you got a $2 million house, you're gonna make it a $4 million house. Okay, we'll give you the money to get from here to there. Give them the permits, the architectural plans, like everything, and then they'll lend you based on what you're gonna do. It's just a bit expensive. You wanna ask about that?
Oh yeah, who's that through? The bank, or is this a separate?
No, not a
it's like-
bank.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like just a separate lender.
you need a good mortgage broker that understands this
Ah,
stuff,
okay.
and they
Okay,
can
what
actually
do you
do.
do?
Okay, yeah. I mean, they can hook you up with that stuff as well. And truthfully, I'm also borrowing from friends, but I'm paying them interest. And all these people can go on title and be secured with the money they're lending you. I think my key learning about construction financing is if you own another property, actually just go get a second mortgage on that property, because then you get all the money up front. It's a bit easier. But, you know, I wanted to do it just so I learned how to do it as well, right?
Seems like it was a headache because it goes in different parts, so maybe when you have that, the money when you get sent, you have to wait for the funds to get sent as well, and like.
No, it comes pretty quick, but like with construction financing, like they'll give you some, and then you build, and then they'll come and inspect, and make sure you're at a certain point, then they'll give you more, and then they'll come and inspect and give you more, and there's a 10% holdback. It's a province of Ontario thing, so even though they say they're going to lend you $1 million, they'll only eventually give you 900.
A
Yeah.
question, do you invest in properties yourself? Like how
Me
many
personally?
how
Yeah.
many properties have you guys?
I have 11 properties right
Okay. Nice.
now. And I do a lot of renos, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I didn't put on here, there's a blanket mortgage too, which we have on some properties in the States where they'll lend you across multiple properties. It's a big pain in the butt, but it could be worth it. And I think the point of this whole thing is, like, really, if you're gonna do a project like this, you wanna make sure, first of all, that you're gonna get the project done, right? So you might say, oh, construction financing sounds expensive. It's less expensive than not doing anything, right? So, you know, the juice is there, right? Like, especially, you saw the numbers on my house, like, we're saving a bunch of money, so, yeah, I'm gonna pay more for financing, but it's worth it. But you know, try and figure out how you can do it for the least. Like, the first renos I did them on credit cards, and yeah, you get that 0% deal, and I was, like, flipping that between cards. The Amex had this thing where anything you bought on an Amex was like 3% for a year, so I just paid for everything on Dynamics, all the Renault stuff. So there's lots of ways to do it, right? Yeah, and that sort of leads to this conversation because, really, the key is, one of the keys in this is making sure you have a broker, either one that you can change the relationship, like some just deal with a lender, some just deal with private money. Just making sure that you have someone that can, take you through the chain, or the people that can take you through the chain, right? Like I have a very good guy when you want to do B lending, you want to do private lending, you want to do construction financing, he can get you the money, right? That's what you need to know. Like you bring him a project and say, here's what I want to do. He's like, yep, I'll get you the money, right? That's the key.
And they understand. It's vital. You can't, honestly, you can't underplay the value of a good mortgage broker that understands what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And
this mortgage broker also does projects. He's also an investor, so
Yeah.
he knows it.
Gets it.
Yeah. Obviously you want to we're realtors, so we're going to tell you. But if you're going to want to, if you want to buy and develop a property in one of these neighborhoods, you're going to want to work with someone that is doing that,
Yes.
right? Because other people are just guessing, right? Like we have no data in our mind because we do it and we do it for
Yeah.
clients. We do it a lot.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
A lawyer, sometimes lawyers are important, especially, to close a property, but also if we're talking about those alternative methods of financing, you actually need a lawyer because you have to add people on title.
Well, I would also mention, a thorough lawyer that's looking at how many times have we caught an open permit or something?
Yeah, totally. You want a lawyer. And actually our lawyer, I get all our clauses from him, so it's the kind of lawyer that's looking for all the right things, and can do the secondary financing stuff, because that's important too, right?
Yeah.
So what were you talking about open closures? I'm confused about something, you said something about open closure, what is that?
Open permits.
Open permits. So we've done a couple of deals in the last year where we found, the lawyers have picked up, our lawyers have picked up
Because we have a
open
clause that
permits.
says,
Open permits, and their lawyers didn't,
yeah,
and that cost the other side
yeah.
big time.
Because a lot of houses were built, they never closed the permit.
Yeah, which means it's not meant to be there.
It's not, yeah, so the
You
seller,
have to tear it down.
well, no, typically they can get it closed or work it out. It could be a risk, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What
They
happens
built an
when-
addition,
Yeah.
yeah.
If the neighbors complain as well, like you build it too far out. Happened to my friend. He's explaining that to me.
Well, in my case, we just did one in the winter where we got a $40,000 discount to get it closed.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, you can
We
negotiate.
Make sure it's good.
We use that opportunity to negotiate.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Right, so if you're just dealing with, a lawyer that's just doing condo deals all day long and what have you, they're not gonna get it.
Yeah, they're not gonna know that.
You know.
Like you were asking about permits, so it sort of depends on what you want to do and to what level. If you just need permits, we have guys that can just do permits. If you want, if you're gonna live in it and you want it to look awesome, you probably want an architect. If you're gonna add significant stuff, you can use a designer. So designers in Ontario can do buildings up to, I think, $6 million. And they can get permits and all that stuff for you. Architects can do more. I think it's really, in my mind, a budgetary thing. Like if you're spending, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's probably worth hiring an architect. If you're doing a smaller project, it's probably, the designers are a bit cheaper, right? So all that depends.
And
Right?
sometimes they specialize. Sometimes a designer, what have you, or an architect will specialize in a certain type of project.
Yeah.
Certain.
Like laneways, those guys that do lane, that just do laneways,
Yeah.
right? I'm doing a laneway now on one of my properties. I'm evaluating 5 different people just to see what they can bring to the table. And then contractors. You were asking about contractors. Truthfully, there's a variety of contractors. A friend of mine said all contractors are jerks. I'll say the nice word. But you want to find ones you can work with. I've had great experiences and I had bad experiences. I have been sued by a contractor. So, we want to help people avoid all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And there's some contract, like, because we do a lot of different projects, right? Like my house, my contractor, he only does big projects, right? And we're doing, similar to the one we showed, another project where we want to move quickly. I have a contractor, he's really good at doing small jobs like $50,000. He'll come in, he's quick, he's fast, he's professional.
Right.
So, but he's not the guy for the big projects, right? Because he's busy. And are they busy? What are you asking all the time?
What do you consider bigger, 100,000 or more?
It depends, right? I think like Jordan alluded to, it's basically like, what are you doing, right? If you're just resurfacing, not taking out a lot of walls, doing a lot of adjustments, that's sort of reskinning or like a medium-sized project. If you're moving wall, like adding space, adding a floor, then you're getting into a bigger project, right? Once you move a wall or move a floor, you're adding 200,000-300,000, like that. So,
What's the, I know this is kind of personal, you don't really consider answers, like what would the average contractor markup be, like, in terms of profit, the material, fix and now, what would and a good contractor charge?
how much do they make?
Yeah, like in the profit.
Yeah, typically their markup is 20%.
Usually around 20%.
Yeah, like a general, so general runs a project, they typically make 20%.
20 to 30.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the project. But that's honestly money well spent, unless you want to.
No, obviously 20%,
Yeah.
but I'm hearing sometimes the contract, even on YouTube channels and like other channels, that contractors, their expenses are 50% and 50% goes to labor and stuff. They sometimes market.
Typically materials 50%, labor 50%, and then the general will charge.
It's interesting, yeah, it's a good question. It's interesting where they make their money. I've got friends that are contractors, and they say, actually, where we make a lot of our biggest margins are the workers that, are $20 an hour that we're paying out at, that we're at $60 an hour. But there's other areas that we don't make money. But it ends up being, at the end of the day, between 20 and 30%.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah. And we didn't put home inspectors, that's also an important one. When you're buying a house, if you can get a home inspection. You can now, it's a bit easier. You want to make sure you have a good home inspection. All right, so you were asking about the timeline, so let's kind of talk about that a little bit. Okay, so, the first part here is kind of figuring out, like, what property you're going to buy. So that's figuring out, how much money you have down, how much you can afford. Some of that depends on the broker you work with. Determining your wants, like the location and all that kind of stuff. And, maybe it's, I want a 3-bedroom house, maybe I want an investment property, maybe I want a triplex, or anyway, tons of options. So then we find the property, right? So you're gonna get listings, you're gonna view properties, you're gonna make offers. And typically, we say, listen, this is a process and it's gonna take time. You're not gonna fall in love with and get the first house you look at. Typically, it happens once in a while, right, Jordan? But, typically, you're looking at 20 to 30 houses, would you say? 20 to 40, depending. Before you get one, yeah. You're making, on average, I'd say somewhere between 3 and 5. We got some deals recently where it was the first one and the second one, but typically it's like the third or the fourth or the fifth. Sometimes it's more. So, part of that is just to just learn how the process works and be comfortable that it's going to take a little bit of time. So then you buy the property, then you secure the financing. So this is the part you were kind of asking, how long does it take? So, I remember I met with a client, we did a project on Montrose where we're renovating, we're still going to put a laneway, and so he sat down, we're like, okay, so what do I need to know? So we, planned out the reno. I said, here are the steps, here's what you need to know. And then he asked a great question, he said, okay, what's going to keep me from this timeline? And I said, honestly, Kevin, you are. You're the thing that's going to keep you, typically, from moving quickly in the process, because there's a lot of decisions you have to make, right? And you have to make them quickly. So ideally, you know what you're doing before you close on the property. So that's when you actually get the keys.
what were to happen if, say, you close on the property and then the permit doesn't go through and they don't allow what you originally wanted?
Yeah, so let me talk about that in a sec.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like as an example of this, I'm actually closing on a property for a client next week. So we've already got plans done. We've already brought in the contractor that I was talking about. It's like that other project to do a small reno. We already got the budget. So once we close next week, we're going to be ready to jump in and apply for permits, right?
Yeah, straight.
So now to your question. Like the permitting process, typically how it works is you submit what you want to do for a zoning review. So someone at the city, they look at your thing and they say, okay, it meets all the zoning requirements, or like doesn't meet this requirement or this requirement. And then you either change your plan or you go to what's called a committee of adjustment, right? So, you know, zoning, so the things that would be like maybe you're a little bit bigger on square footage, or your building's a little bit longer than what's allowed, or you don't have maybe a setback that they want. So that's what would send you to committee of adjustment. And when they say okay, right? So they either say okay or no. If they say okay, then there's a period of waiting, and then you can go get the permits. Now that process, the committee of adjustment, can take 3 to 6 months, depending how busy they are.
So is there a way to know, like, prior to